Welcome to the January 7th, 2025 DVMUG Zoom meeting. Happy New Year. We'll follow the typical format of news, followed by videos, followed by miscellany and question and answers, and social hour. First, we go to this week's news. The news summary is on the BBS, and the URLs are clickable. So if you want more detail than the summaries will give you, you can go to those URLs and learn more about it. Following are synopses on these items. So if you owned an Apple device in the past decade, a check is headed your way, according to Michael Simon from Macworld. If you've always suspected that Siri is listening to you, even though you haven't called upon it, a new class actions lawsuit may give you some peace of mind. Apple has agreed to pay out nearly 100 million to settle a proposed class action lawsuit over Siri's ability to listen, to record, and share their conversations without consent. The lawsuit covers a decade of devices from September 2014 to December 2024 and seemingly includes iPhones, Apple Watches, and any other device with Hey Siri capabilities. Reuters reports class members may receive up to $20 per Siri-enabled device, but that will be dependent upon the number of settlements, which haven't been disclosed. As is the case with class action settlements, Apple is denied any wrongdoing in agreeing to the terms of the settlement. Does that raise any questions or comments? On to the next item.
Hold on, Lee. Is that per device?
That's what he said, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So that struck me as kind of comical in that you're worried about your privacy. Here's $20.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's not much consolation, is it? Okay.
On the other hand, how's he going to listen for Hey Siri without listening?
Right.
Well, supposedly these devices only listen for the keywords
Right.
and disregard everything else. I mean, the words are arriving at the server, or maybe it happens on device, but that it disregards everything except that. And then what arrives for a limited window afterwards, which would be your interaction.
Yeah, but anyway, I don't see how they can quote intercept only Hey Siri at whatever interception point and without hearing all the other words. And I wonder if that's basically all they were found guilty of doing. These lawsuits are a good way to make a lot of money for lawyers, for one thing.
Wait a minute. They weren't found guilty. This was not criminal.
Right.
Civil. And they settled. There was no trial. They settled.
Right.
The key word is like a light switch. Whether it's an Amazon Echo where you say Alexa, I won't say that name. It's supposedly and set to not listen until it hears the trigger word. Likewise with Siri, I shouldn't say that either. It could be either hey, S-I-R-I now, or just S-I-R-I. It's a setting within the settings folder on your Apple device. So at one time, I guess that wasn't included in the settings folders, but it is now.
And if you're worried about it, you can turn that off entirely so it doesn't respond.
Well, don't misunderstand me. I'm not criticizing Apple here. I'm just saying that the settlement is a little strange for other than just the money. and saying, "Oh, we've changed the way the switch works," doesn't really amount to a substantive change, and that's okay with me because if you want Hey Siri, that's part of the deal.
Yeah.
Obviously, I've got it turned off, or I'd be in trouble right now.
Uh,
My device just responded when she heard you say that, and she responded with her little familiar, uh-huh.
Uh,
For
Go
me,
ahead,
the
Mike.
math, this isn't mathing.
okay, next item.
No, wait, Mike,
Wait,
what was that,
wait.
Mike? Hang on a second. What was that, Mike?
Well, the math wasn't mathing to me. They're $100 million, $20 a piece. So what's that? 5 million people? Only 5 million people
Yeah.
had Apple devices from then to then? Doesn't
It's not
seem
even people, it's devices because they said per
Right.
device.
okay. So there's only 5 million devices out there from then to then.
So I think what Lee read though was that up to $20, depending on how many people claim it.
And of
Okay.
course, the lawyers
So it's not-
got a nice chunk.
Yeah,
Yes,
the
the
people that
lawyers-
make out on these are the lawyers.
Well, sure. But if they didn't, then they wouldn't bring the case and everything else. Yeah.
yeah, it's the old dilemma.
Okay, the second news item I'm going to ask you to listen to because there's a hitch in my git and I'm not displaying it, but I'll read it to you. Net neutrality protections again lost as federal court overrules the FCC. The right to net neutrality has again been lost after a federal court ruled that the Federal Communications Commission did not have the power to ban a two-tier internet. The FCC had acted in response to calls from Apple and more than 40 other tech companies to safeguard equal treatment for all. This means that internet service providers and mobile carriers will again be free to accept payments from large websites and services to prioritize their traffic over the rest of the internet. It's notable that many tech giants who could well afford to pay for priority treatment came out against it and in favor of net neutrality. The list of good guys in this battle includes Apple, Amazon, Dropbox, eBay, Facebook, Google, Microsoft, Netflix, Ready, Snap, and Spotify. So it appears as though losing net neutrality, but that Apple was not a bad guy in the situation. So,
Kenny Marks.
So what does being a good guy in this mean?
just that they didn't fight it.
In this case, it really doesn't mean anything because I don't think were any of those internet service providers. I didn't hear Comcast mentioned.
Those were the people who want to get rid of net neutrality. Kenny Marks made a comment on the bulletin board the other day after I posted that information that California and a couple of other states have their own net neutrality laws. So it'll be interesting to see if we get superseded by a
Yep.
board.
So does this have to do with bandwidth or promotion?
It has to do with speed. If you subscribe to, say, Acorn TV and Disney TV, and if Disney pays more, your ISP could throttle down Acorn and boost up Disney. That's just an example. I don't know that those two companies would be interested in that, but they can selectively enhance the speed up to their maximum speed of a given location on the web. They can discriminate.
It is bandwidth. They provide the highest paid, more bandwidth than others.
It's with and delivery. It's about
That's what it
access
sounds
and
like to me. This has been done previously, and this has been in courts for the longest period of time. And during the last administration, they've managed to reinstate net neutrality, meaning they could not. You paid for something, you got whatever exactly what you paid for. What is happening now is that you're going to pay for something. If you want your stuff to be first, you're going to pay more. And if you want your stuff to be run of the mill, you're going to be dealt with appropriately. That's what it sounds like to me. It's not the free.
It's going to be in the delivery. And I don't think it'll be up to the customer particularly. I think it'll be up to the source that if you want your stuff to go faster, you're going to pay.
Mhm.
But it'll be selective communication. It may be a little bit of both. You never know.
And I guess Kenji stated, or you stated that California's got their own laws, net neutrality laws.
That's what
correct.
Ken Marks, who is an attorney, that's what he posted the other day.
That's correct.
So is this to get a company like Netflix to pay appropriately for their share of the overall bandwidth, which is
No.
massive?
For them to pay extra to get premium distribution.
So yeah, that's exactly what it's for.
Yeah.
It's to basically make other companies pay more for, let's just say, fewer roadblocks in transmission.
Yep.
All right. Well, we'll move on. Apple CEO Tim Cook personally invested $1 million in Trump's inauguration. Wesley Hilliard of Apple Insider. President-elect Donald Trump will be inaugurated on January 20th, 2025, and tech giants want to ensure they are noticed. Companies and their CEOs have been making large contributions to the inauguration, and Apple is no different. However, instead of Apple itself contributing its own funds, its CEO, Tim Cook, is providing $1 million of his own money to the inauguration fund. According to a report from Axios, Apple itself will not be providing funds. While the controversial president may seem like a character Apple would prefer to avoid, it isn't exactly possible given the current climate. This is evidenced by Cook's immediate congratulatory post after the election, followed by a dinner with the president-elect. Cook has a vested interest in keeping Trump on his good side. Between constant pressure from regulators around the world and the potential tariffs, what the potential tariffs could do to this, Apple needs to find favor and gain exemptions and protection. And that's what's happened. Now, you'll notice in the background on this picture, there are a few other names up there who have done the same thing. This was just because it was Apple and we're Apple, I thought I would mention it. But you can look at the Kraken crypto, the Farmer Trade Group, Goldman Sachs, and Meta, and a few others, Bank of America, and see that they're in the bowl game. Comments or questions?
Yes, the new era of increased pay-to-play government.
Yep.
Yep.
Didn't
And
this used to
Apple
be called
One.
bribery?
Yeah.
Yep.
That's what I think.
Yeah,
I call it.
that's how I see it.
Fealty and bribery. And
used to be
Apple has
called
been
that.
guaranteed they will not be paying a tariff now for their stuff imported from China.
Hey, grift to play.
Well, yeah.
The old saying used to be, the problem with buying politicians is that they wouldn't stay bought once you bought them.
Right.
So there's, as much as everybody thinks, well, I'll give them some, You can't trust them one way or the other.
There's a certain irony in the fact that Tim Cook used his own money, because back in the days when Apple didn't have its own freedom of speech as a company, one of the rationales of paying all of the CEOs and C-suite guys huge amounts of money was because they were supposed to donate some of that money to politicians to curry favor. Whenever that was no longer needed, I noticed they didn't give much of that money back in terms of annual salary.
Paying tax to the leader instead of the government.
Yes, grift to play. Okay, moving on to the videos. Again, these videos are presented on the BBS with clickable links if you need to review them after the show. First video is by Gary Rosenzweig, MacMost, using links with highlights on the Mac and the iPhone.
Hi, this is Gary with MacMost.com. Let me show you a new feature of macOS 15.2 that lets you link directly to text on a web page. So there's a new feature in macOS 15.2 that Apple really doesn't mention anywhere, but it's something I'm particularly excited about. Previously, of course, you can send a link to a web page just by copying the URL and then sending it in an email, a text message, however you like. You can even use the share button here, and you can share it in a variety of different ways. But this new feature allows you to not only link to a web page, but it will highlight a particular piece of text on that page, and the person receiving the link will see that highlight. So, for instance, let's take this page here and select this text. And let's say I want to send some, but I want them to see this text. And I don't want to have to tell them, look in the first paragraph for these words and all of that. I just want them to be able to see a highlight that shows them this text. So with this selected, I can control click on it, two-finger click on a trackpad, or right-click on a mouse. And then I get the context menu. I have copy right there, which will copy the text itself. But there's also now copy link with highlight. When I do that, what I'm going to get is a very different thing. By the way, if you find these videos valuable, consider joining the more than 2,000 others that support MacMost at Patreon. You get exclusive content, course discounts, and more. You can read about it at macmost.com/Patreon. Here's what I copied if I paste it into a text document. You can see there's the link to the website and then the particular page. But after that, you could see these symbols right here, and then text equals. And then there's the text that I selected. These little characters here represent a space in a way that you can use it in a URL. If I put a space there, then the URL would end right here. But using this kind of represents a space without actually having a space in the text. So if I were to send somebody this text and they were to click on the link, then it would go to that page, just like I'm pasting it in here, and this is what they would see. We would load that page up, and you could see how the text that was selected flashes there, and it remains highlighted even after the flash is gone. So I could send somebody a link, and they can have a way to see exactly the part of the text that I want them to see. Now let's say I want to send this kind of link, so I'm going to select some text like this, and I'm going to copy link with highlight. Now in the Messages app, I'm going to paste this in. And notice how the Messages app is smart enough not only to send the link as kind of a little preview there, but it even puts in quotes the text there. So they will see the quoted text in the message, and I'll send it to them. This is what they'll see. And when they click on it, then you could see it goes to the web page like this and highlights the text just like before. Now, when it comes to the internet, this isn't a new thing, and it's not an Apple thing. This has actually been around for a while, and other browsers have supported it. So, for instance, here I am in Google Chrome, And it's had the functionality for a long time to do this in the same way. And you get a link that not only works here in Chrome like that, but also works if you were to use it in Safari. So the way that these URLs are formed isn't something new and has been around for a while. As a matter of fact, it has worked in Safari to use one of these links for a while as well. So in the last few years, it's actually one of the things I've used Google Chrome for on my Mac was to make these links very easily. And then when I send it to somebody, I know that they could see it, even if they're using Safari that doesn't allow them to make these links. But now you can make the links in Safari as well as Chrome and other browsers. Note that when you have a particularly long piece of text like this, and you go to use it, it will still work. But if you take a look at the code, it's going to have the beginning and the end of that, not all of the text there in the middle. So it's smart enough to make these URLs in a way that they'll never get too long. So now if I were to paste that link into, say, Mail, you could see it appears there. It even will do the little summary here, including all that text. I can convert it to a plain link. You can see that the link is still pretty short. And if I were to open that link, like if the recipient were to just click on it, you can see it highlights all that text, even though it just includes the beginning and the end to identify the text range. And this works in iOS 18.2 as well. So I can select text here on a web page in Safari like this. And if I look through the menu that appears there, I could see that one of the options there now is copy link with highlight. I can copy that. And no matter where I would look at that link, whether it's on the iPhone or Mac or a Windows machine, whatever it was, as long as the browser supports these highlight links, then I would see the highlight. So it's not platform specific. And like with older versions of Mac OS, you can see these highlight links in older versions of iOS. It's just that now on iOS 18.2, you can create them in Safari as well. So the next time you need to send a link to somebody and there's a particular part of the page that you want to point out to them, use this feature to send them right to that text. Hope you found this useful. Thanks for watching.
Comments or questions?
That's cool. You notice it didn't work in Firefox.
Oh, I didn't. Yeah.
No, he said it doesn't work in Firefox. It's not supported.
I think I have been doing this in Safari on the Mac for quite a while, where if you have text highlighted and you then save the URL, you copy the URL, you get the highlight. The thing that seems to be new about this is showing you an image of just the highlighted text. And I didn't know that there was like a convert to plain text link if you right click on, because for instance, I'll frequently post a URL in, say, messages, and it'll create a graphic. And I'd rather send them just the plain text so that they can just see the text instead of getting some picture. And now I see that if I then click on that, right click on that picture, is the command is available, convert to plain text link. So that's cool.
Was I the only one hearing an echo on that video?
Very bad echo.
I think that that's just how Gary is recording them now. He puts reverb on them.
I think
know
he's
why
got
you
a
would do
new
that.
room
Sounds
where the
terrible.
insulation on the walls is not good enough. That's what I think it's just an active recording room.
No, I've watched that video separately on YouTube and it had no echo.
Oh, really?
Something about how you're showing it.
Oh, interesting. We'll have to look into that.
Been like that in his videos for a while.
Yeah, it has.
Yeah.
And some are worse than others. We'll have to investigate that later.
All right.
Thanks for pointing it out.
Second video is by Greg again. How to use iCloud without worrying about losing access to your files.
Hi, this is Gary with MacBoost.com. Let me show you how you can be sure you can work with your iCloud Drive files even if you're offline. Now, when you use iCloud Drive, your files are all stored on the iCloud Drive servers, but you also can access them on your Mac just like they're there locally on your Mac. However, if you're offline, you may not have access to all of your iCloud Drive files. That's because some of your files are cached locally, and others may not be. Depends on how much space you've got on your local drive. For instance, here in this folder, I can see there are 2 files that have this little icon here. And this shows that while the files appear here to be normal just like the rest, they're actually not cached on my local drive. They're in iCloud Drive on the server. And if I were to try to open one of these files, what would happen is it would automatically download them from the server and open them as normal. If the files aren't very large, you may not even notice the difference. The files would just simply open and wouldn't even seem to take more actually cached locally. So they don't need to be downloaded before being opened. How it's decided which files are cached locally and which files are not depends on how recently you've accessed the file. If you haven't accessed the file for a long time, it's offloaded, meaning it looks like it's still there, but the actual contents of the file aren't on your local drive, so it saves space on your drive. Many, or perhaps most of your files may be like this. They're files you haven't used in a while, so your Mac's not going to store them locally. It's going to rely on the internet connection, being able to download them from iCloud Drive on demand when you need them. And if you're connected to the internet, this works great. You just double click on a file like this one, and it will download, and you could even see it happening right there, and then it opens up. Unless you pay careful attention, you may not have even noticed what was going on. And now if I were to close this, you could see that the indicator is no longer there. That's because it is cached locally, because it's a file I just recently accessed. So your Mac's going to be smart about it and say, well, if you just use this file, chances are you may need to use it again soon. I'm going to keep this one cached locally. Meanwhile, in the background, at some point, it may decide another file hasn't been accessed in 30 days or 60 days, or however long, and it decides to offload that one, and that gets this little icon here and needs to be downloaded again before you use it. But this brings up the problem of what if you're not connected to the internet? What if you're completely offline, you're traveling, you're out of your home, away from work, maybe you're completely away from any kind of internet connection, and there's no way to connect to the internet. If you were to open up any one of these files with this indicator here, it wouldn't be able to download it. Let's take a look at what happens if I actually go in here and turn off Wi-Fi. So now I've got no connection to the internet. If I double click it, you can see it gives me an error message. It can't connect to the server. You're not connected to the internet. There's no way for it to get the information in this file. But meanwhile, other files here that have been downloaded, that are cached locally, they can be opened as normal. And you can make changes to them. And if you make changes, what would happen is that when you save them, you can see this little cloud icon here saying it hasn't synced yet to the server. But the next time you're connected to the internet again, it will actually do that syncing, and then this icon will in fact go away. You can see it here, and once it updates and syncs with iCloud, this file will lose this icon here, like that, and now the changes have been saved to the server. By the way, if you find these videos valuable, consider joining the more than 2,000 others that support MacMost at Patreon. You get exclusive content, course discounts, and more. You could read about it at macmost.com/Patreon. So, how to avoid an important file like maybe this one not being available to you? Well, first, let's check system settings. In system settings, if you go to iCloud and then you click on Drive right there, there's a setting here for Optimize Mac Storage. If you have this switched off, that tells your Mac to cache all of the files locally. Every file you've got on iCloud Drive will also be present on your Mac and fully cached. This works great to make sure all your files are available all the time, but it only works if you have enough storage space on your local Mac. If, say, you have a terabyte of data in iCloud Drive, but you only have half a terabyte of drive space on your Mac, then that's not going to work. It can't fit a terabyte of data into half a terabyte of space. So you would have to use Optimize Mac Storage in that case. So if you have it off, then there's no problem. But if you have it on, like most people do, then there is a problem because you do have files like this that may not be available if you're offline. So the first thing you can do is nothing. You can just let iCloud Drive figure out which files you've used recently and have those available locally. Chances are this will fit almost every situation. Imagine you're on an airplane and you need to access a file. It's probably a file you've recently been working with, and therefore it'll be cached locally. So you can just let your Mac do its thing and keep the recent files downloaded and not worry about it. Maybe you will actually run into a situation where you need an older file and don't have it. Hopefully, in that case, there are other things you can work on at that time. But in most cases, for most people, you don't have to do anything. Just let kind of your Mac's algorithm for what is cached and what isn't work on its own to figure out what files you need. But let's say you notice that a file like this isn't cached locally on, say, your MacBook, and you want to make sure it's there when you're traveling. Well, one thing you do is simply open it. Just double click it to open it, and by doing so, it'll download it just like it did this page's document here, and you've got it. So you don't have to do anything special, you don't have to learn any new commands. Just make sure you open that important file you think you may need if you notice it isn't already cached locally, and it should be there if you need it later today or tomorrow when you're offline. However, there's another thing you could do. If you were to select a file and then control-click on it, two-finger click on a trackpad, right-click on a mouse to bring up the context menu, there's an option here for Download Now. That does the same thing as opening it and closing it again, but without actually opening it. It will actually download the file. It will be a good indicator to your Mac that you need this file. It will count it as kind of being accessed recently, and the chances are very good it will remain there for a long time. This could be very useful because you could do it with multiple files. Like, for instance, if you need all of these, maybe even some of these, you can now control-click, two-finger click, or right-click, and you can download now for all of those. You can even do it for an entire folder. So a folder like this, you want the entire thing, you can go and download now, and it will make sure all of the files in here get downloaded and are available offline. Now you may have noticed another option here, Keep Downloaded. This is new in macOS Sequoia. And what this does is not only download the file now, but it'll remember that this file is extremely important and should always be kept cached locally. So in cases where you absolutely must have a file no matter what, whether you're online or offline, you want to indicate Keep Downloaded for a particular file. You can see it indeed downloaded this one here, and it gives this little indicator here showing you've marked this one as it always must be there, and it says Kept Downloaded. You can go back to the context menu here and see there's a check mark next to it, and if you decide you want to turn it off for that file, you can certainly turn it off there. A few other tips here. Note that in the Finder's List view, you get this little icon here, but you can control-click, right-click, or two-finger click on the headers here and actually add iCloud status as its own column. So the idea there is that then you can click on it and sort the files here by their status. And in this case, you actually get a cloud here, meaning it's downloaded. You can see if I hover there, the tooltip shows that. But the cloud with the little arrow there says in iCloud, meaning you don't have it cached locally. And for files that are cached locally, if say you've got a really big one, maybe a video or something like that, and you want to clear off space on your local drive, you can select it. And in the context menu, you can choose Remove Download. So that'll indicate to it that I don't think I need this file anytime soon, so save the space on the drive now. It doesn't make sense to do it for small files, but you can certainly select several files like this, and as long as all of them are cached locally, you will see Remove Downloads and be able to remove all of them. So if you need to make sure that some files are always available to you, even if you're offline, you can either turn off the optimization for iCloud Drive to have everything available offline, or you can use Keep Downloaded to make sure a particular file or set of files is available to you. Hope you found this useful. Thanks for watching.
I sent you an unmute request. Did you hear it? Do you see it?
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Comments or questions?
When I muted you during that video, and the echo seems to have been mostly removed. So it might be. Do you have your speakers turned up pretty loud?
Not for me, it's exactly pretty much the same. I didn't notice a difference.
Or you're muted now, Lee.
That seems pretty good, but if that works, let's do it. Just press the space bar to talk. Well, there was one question I had about that, and when they're using keep downloaded, it wasn't clear to me that if it just kept it downloaded and never lifted it to the cloud so that the other devices could see it, or whether it did not go to the cloud because you said keep downloaded.
No, it goes to the cloud. It just doesn't get removed from your own machine.
Thank you.
Or whenever when you update it, it gets updated and it gets also updated on your machine. That, that kind of, if I may make a statement here, kind of put some thinking into I have certain files that have to do with taxes and stuff, and I guess I'm gonna have to do that. I never did that. I never thought that I would have a problem accessing something I put up there, but it might be a situation.
I find, so I have offload unused apps turned on my iPhone because I have 128 gigs and I pretty much filled it up. And I find it very frustrating because I'll be out driving around and I'll need an app that I haven't used in a while. It has to be downloaded, and the download can take a while for larger apps. So, including things like Google Maps. So it's pretty frustrating. So I plan on my next phone to have much more storage so I don't have to do that.
Well, he's not talking about apps. He was talking about documents and desktop.
Right.
And the apps doesn't have an option to keep downloaded. It's all or nothing. It just does it on its own. There's no keep downloaded, or all you can say is, offload unused apps. You wouldn't think it would offload it if you use it, Google Maps.
No, it offloads apps I haven't used in a while.
Well, then you aren't using Google Maps that much, so it offloads it.
Right.
Okay, moving on. Third video is from Apple Support, how to set up and use eye tracking on iPhone and iPad.
Starting in iOS 18 and iPadOS 18, you can use eye tracking on your iPhone and iPad to help you navigate your device using just your eyes. Here's how. Eye tracking is compatible with iPad Air 4th or 5th generation, iPad Air with M2, iPad Pro 11-inch 3rd to 6th generation, iPad Pro 12.9-inch 5th or 6th generation, iPad Pro with M4, iPad Mini 6th generation, iPad Mini A17 Pro, iPhone 12 or later, and iPhone SE 3rd generation. For the best results, it's important to ensure that you're positioned properly. Your device should be on a stable surface and should be about 1 foot away from your eyes if you're using an iPhone, or 1.5 feet away if you're using an iPad. Your front-facing camera should have a clear view of your face, which should be adequately lit. Ready? Let's set up eye tracking. In Settings, you or your trusted supporter should tap Accessibility, scroll down and tap Eye Tracking under the Physical and Motor section. Here you'll find customizations you can set up with eye tracking, depending on your preferences and experience. For example, the smoothing slider adjusts the pointer movement. Increasing makes the pointer movement smoother, and decreasing makes the pointer movement more responsive. Snap to Item automatically moves the pointer to an item on the screen that's closest to where you're looking. And if you turn on Zoom on keyboard keys, The section of the keyboard you are looking at will magnify when you type. Auto Hide automatically hides the pointer while your eyes are moving and shows it when you hold your gaze steady. When you're ready, you or your trusted supporter should tap to turn on eye tracking to begin a calibration process. Follow the dot with your eyes as it moves around the screen. Continue the process until it's complete. After eye tracking is calibrated, a pointer appears on the screen and follows the movement of your eyes. An outline appears around any item you look at. And dwell control turns on automatically, which performs the tap action by default. When you gaze at an item on the screen, the dwell timer begins, and a circle starts to fill in around the pointer. And when it finishes, the action is performed. You can also change what method you use to perform the tap action at any time in settings. To perform additional on-screen gestures or button presses, you can use the Assistive Touch menu, which also appears automatically when you turn on eye tracking. When eye tracking is on, just look at the screen where you want to move the pointer and hold your gaze steady on an item to tap it. We're going to open Photos and select a photo. This was a fun day. Let's send this to a friend. Hold your gaze on the Share button to tap it and select how you want to share it. We'll send this to our friend using Messages. Gaze at the keyboard keys to type a message. And gaze at the Send button to tap it. If you need to recalibrate eye tracking, just hold your gaze steady at the top left corner of your screen, and the calibration process will begin. And that's how to set up and use eye tracking so you can control your iPhone or iPad with the movement of your eyes. To find out more about the accessibility features on your Apple devices, subscribe to the Apple Support YouTube channel or check out our accessibility playlist to keep learning. Some sequences in this video were shortened. Whether you just got your first set or want to learn more, here are 5 helpful AirPods tips. When you're wearing your AirPods, you can share audio you're listening to with a friend using their AirPods or Beats wireless headphones. In Control Center, tap the button for your AirPods, and then tap Share Audio. If your friend is already wearing their AirPods, when they bring their iPhone near yours, they can tap the Join button.
Close that window.
Well, I don't know how I managed to do that, but comments or questions?
Has anybody ever actually used that?
Not I. I wonder if wearing glasses has an effect on how well it works.
I think
That's
probably one of the most kind and thoughtful things that Apple could have done for some of our Apple users who have need for that. I think that's just amazing.
Yeah, quadriplegics would have no trouble.
Actually, Apple had done something like that with the original 128K Mac and a third-party headset thing way back. I remember testing it at Apple.
I don't think you'll see anything like that come voluntarily out of some of the competition.
I agree with you, Rick. I mean, too often, if the hindrance isn't yours, you're not really aware of it.
Yeah, I had no idea that was something. I mean, if somebody needs it, they need it.
Actually, going way back, Apple's always been in the forefront of supporting assistive technology, even in the Apple II days.
You have a lot for blind people too. Allison Sheridan is really into that.
Correct. I had a lady I drove around in Lafayette who was legally blind. She was one of the officers for the guide dogs up in San Rafael, and she was incredible on her phone. But she says, they make it so easy for me.
That's just beautiful.
All right, let's move on.
I'm not so sure that that we can just say, oh, nobody else does this, because I just did a quick search, and apparently there's an accessibility toolbox built into Android that's might be pretty complete too.
Good.
More the merrier.
Apple might have forced him into it.
All right, let's move on. Fourth video, Ellen Sweeney, Ellen Tips for iOS. Never miss a deadline again with early reminders on the iPhone.
In this video, I'll cover how to set up early reminders for your tasks on your iPhone, and this will also work on your iPad, so you never miss a deadline again. The Apple Reminders app on your iPhone and iPad allows you to set a reminder on the date and time you choose, but you can also set an early reminder so that you get alerted twice for a task, thus reducing the possibility of missing it. Welcome to Ellen's Tips for iOS, where I help seniors master their iPhones and iPads. If you find the video helpful, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. I often set reminders for bills that I don't pay monthly, but maybe I pay quarterly and don't want to forget them. The Reminders app alerts on the day and time that the bill needs paid. However, setting an early reminder ensures that I pay that bill on time. For example, I have a reminder set for today to pay my water and sewer bill, but paying today would probably make my bill late. I can set up a reminder several days in advance so I can finalize the payment, ensuring that it gets there on time. So just so we're clear, the early reminders is in addition to the notification you will get on the actual date and time you have set for that task. Let's create our first early reminder. This works on iOS, iPadOS, and macOS. Remember that your reminders sync via iCloud, so you only need to create them on one device to see them on all of your devices. So to set up an early reminder, we want to open the Reminders app. So I'm going to come to the app library and tap where it says App Library. I'm going to search for Reminders, and I'm going to tap on that to open it. Make sure that you're on the main Reminders page, and then we're going to go ahead and tap on New Reminder in the lower left corner. Once we do that, we'll give our reminder a title, and so let's pretend that this is for a doctor's appointment. We can add notes if we want to. Then we'll get to the details in just a second. So the default list in the Reminders app is called Reminders. If you've created other lists and want to choose that, all you need to do is tap there. All of your lists will be shown, and you can go ahead and choose the list that you want the reminder to go into. I'm just going to leave it as the default list. And now I'm going to go ahead and tap on Details. Here I can give myself a date, so I'm going to go ahead and say December 31st. I'll give a time, and let's just say that the doctor's appointment is at 3 p.m. Right below the time, you'll see the option for Early Reminder. I'll tap on that, and here you'll see it can be none or 5 minutes up to a month. You can even create a custom. So for right now, I'm going to just choose 2 days, but let's go into custom and I'll choose it from there. So here in custom, you'll see minutes, hours, days, weeks, month. I'm going to just choose day, and then I'm going to choose 3 And so 3 days before the doctor's appointment, I will be notified on my iPhone with an early reminder. Once I'm finished, I can go ahead and tap on Add, and now the reminder has been added to the scheduled list. I'll tap on Scheduled, and here you'll see the reminder for the December 31st at 3 p.m. Now, we chose 3 days earlier for an early reminder. What you'll need to know is your early reminder is going to show up at 3 p.m., the same time that you set the doctor's appointment before. So once that happens, you're going to receive an early reminder, and I'm going to show you how that works next. When you receive a time-sensitive reminder, it appears like a standard notification from the Reminders app. The alert will show the future scheduled time for that task, so you know it's an early reminder. So as you can see, I set up one concerning my sewer bill due on 12/18, and I scheduled myself to receive an early reminder today. So remember, you'll also be alerted on the due date, which is 12/18 for this task as well. Now, if I push and hold on this task, you'll see that I have the option to mark it as complete. If I do that, I'll no longer receive an alert on the scheduled date and time. You also have the option to clear this reminder from your notification center. If I swipe to the left, you'll see that there are different options. I can clear it. I could push options, which will give me, the options to turn off time sensitive or view settings. Right now, I'm just going to come back out of there again. But if I want to clear this from the notification center because it's not due until 12/18, I can swipe to the left and I can tap on clear. And now this will clear that notification, but I'll still be reminded on the date that it's due. When you finally receive the actual scheduled reminder, if you push and hold on it, you'll see that several options appear. So you can choose to complete the task or defer it for an hour or even the following morning. So for right now, I'm going to go ahead and mark the task as complete. And if I come back into the Reminders app, you'll see that it was scheduled for today, and now there's nothing on my Reminders app, so that task has been completed. Setting early reminders on your iPhone and iPad can be a game changer for staying organized and on top of your task, whether it's remembering to pay a quarterly bill or handling other time-sensitive responsibilities. Early reminders ensure you're alerted well in advance, reducing the risk of missing important deadlines. The process is straightforward, and thanks to iCloud, any reminders you set will sync across all your devices. By using this simple feature, you can plan ahead with confidence and enjoy peace of mind, knowing you'll never overlook a task again. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.
Hi, this is Gary with MacMost. Let me tell you about Hi, this is Gary with MacMost. Let me tell you about the Date Added File property. So when using the Finder to manage your files, sometimes you want to sort or search for files based on their date. But what date do you mean exactly? There is, of course, the date created for a file. There's also the date last modified and the date last opened. But there's a fourth date that could be pretty useful, but we rarely talk about it. It's called date added. So when in the Finder here, let's go to List View. And List View gives you columns with different file attributes. And typically you'll see name and then date modified. This is the primary date that people deal with. That was the last time you made a change to the file. If the file is brand new, date created and date modified will be the same thing. But as you work with the file, date created stays the same. Date modified will change over time as you make changes to the file. If you select a file like this one and get info on it by going to File and then Get Info or just Command I, you'll see in here under More Info, all three of these dates. You'll see the date the file was created. You'll see the date it was last modified, and also the date it was last opened. But you won't see this fourth date, date added. The main place you see this date is not here in a typical folder in the Finder. But if you go to your Downloads folder, I've got the default settings here. So Downloads folder is here in the dock, and I could easily open it up. But I could also have gone to Downloads in the left sidebar if you see it there. Or you can go to Downloads in the menu. And when you see your downloads here, you will see date added. The Downloads folder by default has date added as a column instead of date modified. This makes sense because you want to know when you downloaded these files, and date added will tell you that. And then in addition, it will even automatically sort with the most recently downloaded file at the top. So you could reverse that like this or sort by name if you like. You could always change the sort by clicking on the headers here in List View. In addition, you can also show date added in a normal Finder window like this. You can either control click, two-finger click on a trackpad, or right click on a mouse on any of these header columns and then select date added here. Or you can go to View, Show View Options, or Command J, and you can check date added there. It adds this column. So I still see date modified here, but I also have date added. I can even drag this to the left if I want. By the way, if you find these videos valuable, consider joining the more than 2,000 others that support MacMost at Patreon. You get exclusive content, course discounts, and more. You can read about it at macmost.com/Patreon. But wait a minute, what is date added then? It makes sense in the Downloads folder. That's the date that the file was downloaded, that it was added to your Downloads folder. What does it mean when it's just one of your regular folders in your Documents folder? Well, a better way to think of this attribute is instead of date added, think of it as date last moved. So when the file was moved into this folder. So it could have been in another folder that you had. You could have created this file and then you could have moved it into this folder, and the date added attribute will reflect the time when you move the file there. So let's test this out by going up one level here. And there are all the files here in this folder. Let's look at another folder here, this one, and let's say I move one of these files into this folder. So first let's add the date added column here, and we'll move it here to the left so we can focus on it. So we can see here that this document has September 5th, 2023, and if I were to move it into this folder, it moves, and notice date added changes to right now. Date modified stays the same, so with date created and date last opened. But the date added changes. Now I've let the clock advance by 1 minute here, so now if I were to move it back into this folder, you could see it still maintains the date that it was last moved. So now 11:06 as opposed to 11:05. Note that undo won't change this. If I do edit undo or just Command Z, it goes back here, but it keeps the same date added. You won't be able to get back the old date once you've moved the file. Now the only real way to see the date added in the Finder is to use List View and have date added as a column. But you can actually use date added in some other cases. For instance, if I go to Icon View and I go to View and Sort By, notice I can sort by date added. So I can at least see the order in which files were added to this folder. I can also use Groups, and then with Groups on, I can group by date added. So I can see when files were added to the folder like that. And this will also work in Column View as well. Now you can also search for files using date added. So let's go up a level here to the Documents folder and start our search right here. So if I were to start a search using Command F, I have the search field that I could enter, but also the search criteria here set to kind as any. I could change that and choose Other, and then from Other I can search for added and find date added. I could add it to that main menu there or just use it this one time. And I could set date added is and say within the last 10 days. And this will find everything in my Documents folder that has a date added date in the last 10 days. In other words, files that have been moved recently. I can expand this and say 100 days, and I could see all of the different files moved in the last 100 days. I'm still not going to see it here in the columns, but I could easily add it and then sort by that. So I could see the most recently moved files and only be looking at the ones for the last 100 days. And you can also do on exact dates, today, after a certain date, this week, all of that. So you have lots of different options for doing searches like this. You can also create a saved search, also known as a smart folder, by simply clicking right here, and then you can name it something appropriate like that if you like. So you can always go to this save search. I can add it to the sidebar, or I can just place it somewhere like in a folder on my desktop or something like that, and instantly access this search again. So I can always see which files have been moved around most recently. And in this case, it's just in my documents folder, which is really useful because the downloads folder is not in the documents folder. So I'm not going to get a bunch of downloads in here. I'll just get files that I moved into the documents folder or around inside the documents folder in this search result. There are many uses for this, of course. For instance, you may be looking for files and have no idea when the last time you opened them or modified them, or even when they were created, because maybe they were given to you by somebody else. But you may remember when you put them all into a folder or move them all to their proper places, maybe on a certain date or in a date range. So you could do a search for that date as the date added date, rather than trying to search by date modified, date created, or date opened. And here's one last tip. If you really want to find out the date added of a file without using the list view in the Finder, while you can't do it in the info window or any other way in the Finder, you can actually do it in the terminal. So all you need to do in the terminal is use MDLS, which will look up attributes of files. And the attribute name that you want to look for is KMD item date added. And it has to be capitalized like that with the MD and then the ID and A all uppercase. And then you just need to put the path to the file. Easy way to do that, of course, is to just drag and drop. So I can drag this file here like that and then return, and I will get in the terminal window here the date added. And you can see how it matches this date right here, although of course the time zone is going to be GMT. If you really wanted to, you could build this terminal command into a shortcut or something if you need easy access to the date added for a selected file. So hope you learned something new about your files in the Mac Finder. Thanks for watching.
Answer questions.
Yeah, we saw that last month. I just looked it up in your list you sent me on the BBS. That wasn't the next one in your list
Um,
for today's videos.
was the Ellen one that we didn't get a chance to do comments on about?
Well, go back one window. Go back 2 windows and you can see the one. Do you have another one? So that's no, one more forward. One more. One more. One more. That's the one we're supposed to be seeing. The one about date added. You used it last month.
Okay. Oh, I did?
Yeah, I looked it up in your list you sent on the BBS.
Oh my.
Hi, this is Gary with MacMost.
Yeah, okay. You got the wrong one in there. Okay, so you don't have the other one.
Yeah. Sorry.
Well, it's 4 o'clock.
What was happening earlier was that when I was pressing my space bar to talk, it was doing advances. So, all right, moving on to miscellany. 2 items. Malicious charging cable is a reminder. Number 2, the inconvenient truth about wireless charging. This malicious charging cable is a reminder why it is best to stick to official accessories. There is a microprocessor embedded in this OMG cable connector, which is capable of all sorts of malicious activity. The secret antenna attached to the chip also means these malicious activities could be executed over Wi-Fi. It's even possible for these chips to extract data from your device or remotely access it. The OMG Elite cable is a scarily stealthy hacker tool. And you can see in the diagram what they're talking about. So stick to official accessories unless you might run into trouble. The Inconvenient Truth About Wireless Charging by Chris Hetchy of Pocket Lint. Why wireless charging can be a hassle. He says safety. He says that they're clumsy by the bedside if you got your clock and your other stuff there, and it gets clumsy. And he says that the wireless charger gets hot, and that heats your battery, and that damages your battery. And he claims that the charging device might get dusty and affect the ability to charge. So those are his opinions. And if you want to study them closer, you can go to the URL and see about them. Any comments or questions on that?
So was that OMG cable you showed us supposed to be a USB-C cable? Because it looked different than the other one as far as its dimensions.
Well, there's the comparison USB-C cable from Amazon, and he's got them being compared right next to each other, except that the OMG cable's got extra lines in it.
It also looks like it's wider, although that could be just
it could be an illusion.
Yeah, it's true.
See, the OMG cable is either 119 or $179.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Nobody
119
would
to
buy that by mistake.
$219.99.
Nobody would buy that by mistake and use it and then somebody hack it. That would be for somebody to do something they knew what they were buying because they were trying to hack something. You wouldn't buy that by accident.
No.
Well, you got to watch out if I've heard the story. If you don't want to just charging, I don't know if they do this in the airports, don't ever go anywhere, but there's cables lying around, here, charge your phone, complimentary charger. Well, you don't know what's on the other end of that cable. You don't want to do that. Doesn't even have to be a malicious cable. It could be plugged into something that can capable of, accessing your data on your phone.
I'm looking at an article on The Verge, and I guess this thing's got a keylogger and everything else built into it.
Although you'd think your phone would ask you, modern phones, trust this device to even you connect to your own computer, to not do something with a standard cable. It always asks you, you trust this device? And you have to type in your password, trust this device. And that's the way it is on modern phones and versions of iOS.
But people can turn that off and forget that they've turned it off.
I see it also comes in Lightning, USB-A, and USB-C. It works on any target device, including Windows, Mac, iPhone, and Android. Wow.
Is it being sold for special capabilities, Rick, or is it just
the article here I'm looking at on my phone, The Verge, says for most people, though, the threat of being targeted is very low. The elite version costs $179.99, so this is definitely a tool for professional penetration testing. Than something a low-level scammer could afford to leave lying around in the hopes of snaring a target. still costs tend to come down over time, especially with a streamlined production process.
Yeah, and the basic one costs $120.
Yeah.
On the site where they're selling them, it says the OMG cable is a handmade USB cable with an advanced implant hidden inside. It's designed to allow your red team to emulate attack scenarios of sophisticated adversaries. Until now, a cable like this would cost $20,000, such as NSA's Cottonmouth.
And of course, they won't sell that to anybody but a valid red team member, right?
Right.
Sure. Or the necessary green in your wallet.
Hey, yeah. Yeah, green team wins every time, doesn't it, Rick?
What is a red team?
Or red team, blue team thing is they use it primarily in intelligence and military applications, but the red team does the attack and the other team is trying to defend against the attack. So this is a way of putting people through exercises about how secure they are.
So the second miscellany item you had there, Lee. So I haven't used, so I see that phone covers that are allowed to pass through magnetic charging have a circle on the back and a bar. Are those magnets in order to hold it in the right place?
Yes.
Or is that how the signal gets transferred through the thick distance?
I can testify. It's to hold it securely to the MagSafe charger. If you don't have that, and you have a bedside charger where you put your phone in horizontally,
right?
It won't stick. So you have to have a case with this on the back of it, and that's actually a magnet.
Okay.
So if you were to try to charge it without that magnet, you'd probably have a hard time trying to put it dead center where it would charge, right? This way it makes sense.
Actually, I have, or had, I gave it away, a charger that was not magnetic, and it's just a matter of adjusting it until the little green charge comes on.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
The AirPod cases are the same way. When you put them on it moves around. You have to get it centered, and if you bump it and it gets off center and it stops charging.
Yeah.
You got magnets to hold it in the proper position.
Because I have a little side story regarding my toothbrush where it's not magnetic, but there is a there is a seat on the charger, and you put the toothbrush on top of the charger.
Yeah.
What all that got gunked? Well, when this got all gunked up inside with toothpaste, so I thought, oh well, it broke, and
essentially a complete transformer. It's a ferrite core that is taking advantage of an alternating current, on, off, on, off, on, off. And then a coil within the toothbrush. And it's the same thing on our phones too, where it takes advantage of that alternating current, alternating magnetic flux that generates a current in a coil. You may have, when you were in high school or junior high, taken a magnet and thrust it into a coil to get a burst of energy. In physics, that's essentially the process.
Move it up and down.
Yeah.
So yeah, once I cleaned it and put it back on, the light lit up and it charged, and it's fine.
Yep. It's called inductive charging.
Yeah, it's like like the new stovetops, electric stovetop, they're inductive
Yeah.
connect. Yeah.
And there's eventually going to be highways with induction in them so that electric cars won't even need to have batteries.
Oh, Rick, I don't think so. I know they're making a demo.
Yeah,
Like
it's
the
going to
monorail.
take a tremendous amount of power.
Right. It's sort of like the monorail system in Seattle. That was a one-off.
I'm not familiar with that.
Not worth going into.
I've been reading that they say that the power needs of AI will outstrip all current generating capacity.
No.
Yeah, that does seem to be a little disadvantage there, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Is
so
that
much for
because with
charging
certain
electric
cars?
cars. It's all going to be used for AI.
Right.
Well, that's why we're reactivating former nuclear power plants.
Yeah, I have a friend who's retired now, and we play dominoes together. He used to sell nuclear power plants to various companies, corporations, countries. Traveled all over the world selling these things.
Oh,
he's a great proponent of nuclear energy.
Are we still recording for the first part or second?
Yes, we are.
Well, that's technical, man.
Yeah,
Nuclear.
well, it is technical. You're right.
We have any more questions related to the videos we saw, or we can go to general Q&A and start a new video?
Q&A.
Yeah, I
Hearing
like
none,
that. That was
Lee, in your
animation
screen,
you had there, Lee.
that was nice, Lee. I like that.
Okay, well, so we'll stop this recording. DVMUG members who are watching this on YouTube, you can get the video for the general Q&A next. We're going to stop this one and start a new one. The link will be on the BBS. So see you there.